right, 2 Chronicles chapter 12. Let's call this one for now overcompensating, as the very first verse of the chapter is going to show us how Rehoboam does not handle success all that well, understanding that he did a great job of recovering from his mistakes, humbling himself to be able to listen in situations where he once was unwilling. But now, as God begins to bless his strengthened kingdom, it's going to go to his head, and he's not the only one. If we were honest with ourselves, before God has humbled us in times of success, we probably didn't always handle it all that great. And so Rehoboam is a pretty good example for each and every one of us for the times in which we have come out of a position of humility, meaning life might have humbled us, when God brings us into a situation where we now have recovered and we have reason to hold our head up. Sometimes we are tempted to hold it up a little too high, and that is what he is going to do here, because after God blesses him, he forgets God, but God's going to remind him where he ranks as God brings Shishak, the king of Egypt, to invade Judah and essentially take all of those fortified cities Rehoboam spent all that time building up, reminding us of something else we've talked about in previous chapters, the degree to which God is continually encouraging these kings to make sure that they follow him with their whole heart, understanding that Rehoboam has come a long way since he was able to humble himself enough to listen to those he once might have disregarded, but that is the level of humility that is brought on by hard times, understanding that he still does not have the level of humility necessary to handle prosperity well. And so when we're looking at that whole concept of being complete or even perfect, as we mentioned, Jesus will say in the Sermon on the Mount, it sounds ridiculous, but to the degree we ignore the need to be complete, we are still potentially vulnerable. Thus, the repeated reminder God gives to his kings to be wholly devoted to all the things they need to do to lead Israel well. And so in this situation, we see Rehoboam in trouble once again. But as we mentioned, as good as he seems to be at getting into trouble, he seems to be pretty good at humbling himself to get out of it. And that is exactly what he does here, seeing his mistake and prompting God to save him from total devastation at the hands of Shishak, king of Egypt. And so God leaves him a remnant of what he has, but it is not going to be the same, understanding that he inherited, even though it was just two tribes that were still in the golden age of Israel, understanding all the gold that it was described that Solomon had accumulated during his reign, that is now going to come to an end, as that is now going to be Shishak stuff. And so the benchmark or kind of the landmark for the transition between the age of Solomon and the age of Rehoboam is going to be all those golden shields that Solomon had built up, understanding that if you got enough money to put gold on your military stuff, then you're probably doing pretty well. But those days are gone, because Rehoboam is no longer going to have enough gold to rebuild the golden shields, and he is going to replace them with shields of bronze, giving us another reminder of something we have mentioned, and that is, as we age, recovery does not come as easy as it might have when we were younger. And just as our physical bodies deteriorate in a way that makes it more and more difficult to recover with the same ease and speed that we might have once recovered when we were young, God's recovery takes much the same shape. And so even though we mentioned that he is going to still hand off a kingdom to his son, that is only two tribes, but two tribes that are quite possibly stronger than the 10 tribes that Jeroboam has in the north, those are two tribes that are now going to be a lot poorer than they otherwise might have been, no matter how strong they might be at the time Rehoboam hands off the reins to his son Abijah. Understanding that another consequence of Rehoboam's most recent flood might be the fact that now that Israel has gotten a chance to see how easy it was for Shishak, king of Egypt, to invade Judah, they might be just as emboldened as well. And so the latter part of this chapter is going to describe the continual war and conflict between Rehoboam and Jeroboam throughout the rest of Rehoboam's reign, giving us a chance to see the way in which God allowed Rehoboam to recover yet again, but this time with much less gold and probably much less peace than he would have had if he would have simply understood the need to be complete.